What if I told you there's a firearm you simply can't see, but one that nevertheless exists? That's right. This isn't a late-night sci-fi flick. In the real world, there's a weapon so cutting-edge, so unique, it earned the nickname, the Invisible Gun. Are you intrigued yet? Buckle up, because what you're about to discover is straight out of the realm of imagination, and absolutely true. The story of the Invisible Gun is more than just a tale of advanced technology. It's a testament to humans redefining the limits of what's possible in weaponry and innovation. Let's travel back to the mid-2000s, when engineers and researchers were pushing the boundaries of what people thought a firearm could be. Does invisibility sound far-fetched to you? Well, let's break this down. The futuristic qualities of a so-called invisible firearm are rooted in two core elements: its construction material and its manufacturing process. Most firearms you've seen or heard of are made of metal, a material that's easily detected by conventional radars, X-rays, or even metal detectors. But what if you could build an entire operating firearm made almost entirely from something undetectable? Enter polymer. No, not your grandma's Tupperware. Advanced 3D printable polymer materials capable of withstanding immense pressure and heat. Yes, I'm talking about firearms that could be manufactured using 3D printers. When the concept first hit headlines, the world was both awestruck and alarmed. Could a weapon made from 3D printed plastic parts operate with the same precision as its metal counterparts? Could it really fire bullets? Believe it or not, the answer is a resounding yes. But let's rewind for a second. Polymers themselves aren't invisible. That's not the angle we're going for here. Instead, the term invisible gun comes into play because this type of weapon eludes traditional detection methods. No metal means it's not showing up on a metal detector at an airport, and no recognizable stamping patterns make it hard to trace back to its source. It slips in between the cracks of conventional security measures. This social and technological loophole gives it its notorious nickname, invisible. And this isn't just theoretical. On May 5, 2013, Defense Distributed, a Texas-based organization, shocked the world by debuting the Liberator, the first 3D printed firearm. It wasn't completely invisible. It still used a small metal firing pin. But what it did was kickstart an entire conversation about just how far humanity can take the idea of printable weaponry. Why would anyone create such a thing, you may wonder? Well, like most groundbreaking innovations, it was partly about the technology itself, partly about challenging the norms, and large part about sparking debates around legality, ethics, and safety. The makers argued they were showcasing how expansive and transformative 3D printing technology could be, but critics argued something more sinister, pointing out its potential for misuse by those who didn't want weapons traced. This brings us into the murky waters of invisibility as both a technological marvel and a societal risk. The very idea of having firearms manufactured outside the constraints of traditional foundries and supply chains raises questions. Who controls the blueprint files? How do you regulate transparency? And if you think things stopped in 2013, oh, how wrong you'd be. The concept of 3D printable firearms only grew more sophisticated with time. Today, we have hybrid designs that incorporate other materials with polymers, allowing for longer-lasting and more efficient operations. In some cases, advancements in polymer science have developed materials better at mimicking the strength of steel itself, pushing the once rudimentary invisible gun concept into something that edges ever closer to its industrialized counterparts. Now you're probably asking, okay, but how is that legal? And where do people even get these weapons? Here's where things get even more mind-boggling. In many jurisdictions around the world, the legality of 3D printed firearms falls into a gray zone. Governments are trying to catch up, updating firearm legislation and criminal codes to account for digital blueprints and at-home fabrication methods. But for every new law, you'll have innovators, or in some cases bad actors, finding loopholes. For instance, The blueprints for the Liberator were made publicly available online for a brief time before multiple governments demanded they be taken down. But here's the thing about the internet. Once data is out there, retrieving it becomes next to impossible. There have even been entirely open designs circulated for firearms that use no regulated parts at all, meaning a fully polymer weapon with no metal whatsoever. Imagine that. Let's talk about technical limitations for a moment, because while the invisible gun is an eye-popping concept, we're not saying James Bond-level gadgetry is fusing into our everyday lives just yet. Most 3D printed firearms are not equipped for prolonged use. They may misfire after a few rounds or suffer rapid degradation under repeated stress. But with every passing year, lab experiments and hobbyist trials lead to stronger, better designs. If early printed guns could last 10 shots, today's iterations might last hundreds. And if you think it's just firearms enthusiasts tinkering with these methods, think again. Research institutions and even the military have also dabbled in prototype development. Labs are testing how additive manufacturing, which is a fancy term for 3D printing, could revolutionize firearm supply chains. If you could ship a gun anywhere by just sending a file for printing, the implications for defense logistics are enormous, not to mention alarming. Let's dwell on that idea of alarm for a moment, because while it's fascinating to think of an invisible gun as technological wizardry, it's also a glaring red flag in discussions about public safety, law enforcement, and controlling who gets access to deadly weaponry. The invisible gun doesn't just sidestep physical detection. It sidesteps policy, oversight, and in some cases, the law altogether. It's both history-making and troublemaking. Before you panic, take note of this. No technology, regardless of how futuristic, is inevitable. For every innovation threatening the societal status quo, there's an equal effort to counter or ethically regulate it. Metal detectors are being replaced with multi-material scanners in many key locations, with the ability to detect polymer objects hidden in clothing, baggage, or concealed compartments. Legislation aimed at banning 3D file blueprints for weaponry continues to evolve. Enforcement isn't perfect, but that doesn't mean it's stagnant. And let's not forget the ethics of innovation itself. Many technologists involved in early 3D printing firearm development point out they aren't interested in creating weapons for chaos. In their eyes, it's about exploring what's possible in engineering and how designs can innovate beyond even weapons industries. Imagine 3D printing tools, machinery, and life-saving items during emergencies. Revolutionary? Certainly. But misunderstood? Even more so. To wrap things up, the existence of an invisible firearm, a so-called ghost gun, bears undeniable intrigue. It's a sci-fi concept turned reality and a living, functional mirror of mankind's dual tendencies toward creation and destruction. Each sector of society, from inventors to policymakers, is grappling with these questions as technology continues at a breakneck speed. The meaning of invisibility when paired with firearms has gone from literal, like camouflaging stealth, to metaphorical, like loopholes in the laws that govern them. So the next time you hear someone mentioning invisible weaponry, remember, it's not a total work of fiction, but an engineering marvel steeped in controversy. What side of history this innovation lands on, whether as humanity's invention or its cautionary tale, is yet to be fully told. For now, all you can do is watch.